What do you do when your own blood takes your legacy and builds a kingdom without you? Roman Reigns ruled WWE for years, undisputed, unmatched. But the one man he trusted most? Solo Sikoa? Just won at Night of Champions, then formed a new faction. Without Roman. No call. No warning. Backstage, Roman didn't speak. Just stared at the monitor. Cold. Betrayed. You could see it, this wasn't just business. It was family breaking apart, again. And here's the twist, he didn't walk away. He smiled. Because the tribal chief doesn't get even. He gets everything back. Follow for what's coming next. What do you do when your own blood takes your legacy and builds a kingdom without you? That's not just a tagline. That's a question Roman Reigns had to answer the moment Solo Sikoa walked out of Night of Champions, his hand raised in victory, and his back turned to the man who once called him family. Let's set the scene. It was supposed to be business as usual. Another pay-per-view, another clash, another chapter in the never-ending war for dominance in WWE. But Night of Champions didn't end with the usual celebratory pose, pyro, and tribal chief standing tall. It ended with silence. Not in the arena. The crowd was roaring. Online, fans were exploding in real time. But backstage? Backstage, the man who ran WWE for over 3 years, who dominated not just the ring but the entire industry, stood still. Roman Reigns didn't shout. Didn't flip a table. Didn't storm into the locker room demanding explanations. He stared at a monitor. Eyes narrowed. Lips tight. No words. Just cold calculation behind a smile that looked more like a threat than a grin. This wasn't just a win for Solo Sikoa. It was a declaration. He wasn't standing in Roman's shadow anymore. He was casting his own. And here's the real twist, the one that made the air feel heavy backstage, the one the locker room whispered about after the cameras stopped rolling. Roman smiled. Think about that. This is the man who destroyed his own cousins on national television when they questioned his authority. Who tore down everyone from Brock Lesnar to Cody Rhodes without hesitation. Roman Reigns has been many things, dominant, calculated, ruthless, but surprised? Betrayed? Not often. Not like this. Solo Sikoa was supposed to be different. The enforcer. The quiet one. The loyal one. The final piece in Roman's masterpiece. Instead, he just took a hammer to it. This isn't just a wrestling story. This is a family fracturing in public. If you're just tuning into this storyline thinking it's another standard WWE feud, think again. This is personal. This isn't two superstars trading punches and promos for title belts. This is about legacy, blood, and power. Roman Reigns didn't just carry a title. He carried a lineage. A dynasty. The legacy of the Inoue family, a family that stretches across decades of wrestling royalty. Yokozuna, Rikishi, Umaga, the Usos, The Rock. And for the past 3 years, he's been at the center of it all. Until now. Because Solo Sikoa didn't just win a match. He made a statement, I don't need you anymore. No call. No text. No heads up. Solo didn't warn Roman. He didn't consult him. He didn't even acknowledge him. He just walked out with his own crew, new faces, new energy, a new faction, and left Roman watching like a ghost of something that used to matter. Let's break down the exact moment that sent shockwaves through the WWE universe. Solo Sikoa stands tall in the ring after defeating his opponent at Night of Champions. Not just winning, dominating. The crowd is stunned. He doesn't raise a finger to the sky. Doesn't nod to the hard cam. He just turns to the ramp, and 3 unfamiliar figures step onto the stage. You can feel the room shift. You can feel the betrayal in the air. These weren't just any wrestlers. They weren't random call-ups or one-night partners. These were chosen allies. By Solo. Not Roman. There's no bloodline symbolism. No salute to the tribal chief. Just new ground being claimed, and old loyalties being erased. Cut to the backstage monitor. Roman is watching. Not blinking. Not moving. Just processing. And then, the smile. A slow, cold, deliberate smile that says one thing: you forgot who you're dealing with. Let's not underestimate that smile. Because Roman Reigns doesn't smile without a reason. This isn't the grin of a man who's been beaten. It's the look of someone who's already 3 steps ahead. It's not "I'm surprised." It's "I saw this coming. And I let it happen." Because here's what you need to understand about Roman: he doesn't get even. He gets everything. This has always been his playbook. He lets the family war explode. Then, when everyone's bleeding, when the kingdom is in flames, he walks through the fire and reclaims the throne. Ask Jey Uso what happened when he stepped out of line in 2020. Ask Jimmy what happened when he tried to rescue his brother. Ask Sami Zayn. Roman doesn't just punish disloyalty. He rewrites the story until he's the last name left in it. Backstage, no cameras were rolling. No promo was cut. No "acknowledge me" speech. Just Roman. Standing there. Not a single word. But everyone around him, from production crew to locker room talent, felt it. That silence was heavy. Not awkward. Not confused. Calculated. You don't survive this long at the top of WWE without knowing exactly when to speak, and when to let the world wonder what you're thinking. That's the brilliance of Roman Reigns. He lets his opponents think they've won. He lets them build. He lets them feel safe. Then he comes back and takes it all. This isn't the end of the Bloodline saga. This isn't a simple betrayal arc. This is war. Solo Sikoa just made the boldest move of his career. And Roman Reigns? He hasn't retaliated yet. He hasn't said a word. But if history has taught us anything, it's this: Roman Reigns doesn't need to talk. He strikes when it counts. So the question isn't if he'll respond. It's how far he's willing to go to take back what's his. Because this time, it's not just about a title. Or even the throne. It's about something deeper: blood. Betrayal. And the fight to define what it really means to be tribal chief. Night of Champions 2025 was never meant to be Solo Sikoa's night. On the card, his match was sandwiched between marquee title defenses and a long-anticipated return segment. The arena was buzzing for everything except what Solo was booked to do. Until he flipped the script. Because what unfolded that night wasn't just a match. It was a statement of intent. It was a quiet enforcer turning into a loud symbol of change. It was a spark that lit the fuse on the most dangerous power shift WWE has seen in years. It didn't look like much at first. Solo Sikoa walked to the ring the way he always did, hoodie up, head low, no theatrics. No pyro. No grand tribal entrance. He didn't even glance at the crowd. He just walked, straight, focused, heavy-footed. You'd think he was heading into another hit job, another execution ordered by the tribal chief himself. But Roman wasn't there. That alone was strange. For the past few years, every time Solo walked into battle, Roman wasn't far behind. Either in the ring. In the skybox. On the screen. His presence loomed. Not tonight. Tonight, Solo walked alone. His opponent was no pushover either. A top-tier babyface with momentum, fan support, and a storyline heading toward title contention. The match was supposed to be competitive, gritty, and emotional. A back-and-forth clash where Solo, maybe, barely edges out a win with some help or interference. But there was no interference. And there was no back and forth. Solo dominated. From the opening bell, it was clear he came to do more than win. He came to make a point. He was faster, sharper, more aggressive than we've seen him before. Every move was stiffer. Every slam felt like it was aimed not at his opponent, but at something deeper, at Roman, at the system, at the expectations everyone placed on him. Midway through the match, something changed in the crowd. It was subtle. They weren't just reacting to moves anymore. They were watching. Studying. Reading the energy. This wasn't Solo as the quiet muscle. This was Solo Sikoa as a man with purpose. He didn't scream at the crowd. Didn't play to the cameras. But his expression, focused, cold, said it all. I'm not just here to finish this match. I'm here to start something new. And then, he won. Decisively. No cheating. No tricks. No outside help. He hit his finisher with surgical precision. 1, 2, 3. Over. But what happened next was what changed everything. Because Solo didn't raise his hand. He didn't celebrate. He didn't even look down at his fallen opponent. He turned to the entrance ramp. And then it happened. 3 silhouettes stepped onto the stage. They didn't have matching gear. They weren't holding up signs or throwing up a faction symbol. But it was clear, these men were here with purpose. And they were here for Solo. The arena went still for a moment. The audience wasn't sure what to make of it. Who were they? Why now? Why Solo? Then, Solo stepped forward. He didn't gesture. He didn't nod. He just walked toward them and stood shoulder to shoulder. And that was the moment. No words. No music. No official announcement. Just presence. And suddenly, it was clear to everyone in the building and watching at home, Solo Sikoa wasn't an enforcer anymore. He was a leader. That faction? That was his. Not Roman's. Not the bloodline. His own. And WWE had just witnessed the rise of something brand new, and something incredibly dangerous. Backstage sources later revealed that the 3 men who joined Solo were scouted weeks in advance. It wasn't last minute. It wasn't spontaneous. This had been building. Quietly. Under everyone's radar. They didn't speak to media after the show. No interviews. No post-show press conference appearances. But what they did in that 10-second visual spoke louder than any promo could. It sent one very clear message: Roman Reigns doesn't control the narrative anymore. Cut back to the broadcast, commentators were scrambling. You could hear the confusion in their voices. They wanted to identify the men, connect the dots, but the production crew cut away quickly. And for good reason. Because backstage, the reaction was even bigger. Roman Reigns was watching. Not from the luxury suite. Not from a limo. But backstage. In gear. With Heyman nearby. When the feed showed Solo standing with his new allies, Roman's reaction wasn't outrage. It wasn't confusion. It was stillness. According to insiders, he didn't say a single word for several minutes. He just kept watching. No clenched fists. No pacing. Just still. Until the smile broke out. And the room went quiet. For a man who's built his legacy on dominance, that kind of quiet is terrifying. Because it doesn't mean he's defeated. It means he's thinking. Plotting. Calculating his next move. But that was later. In the moment, Night of Champions belonged to Solo Sikoa. The match itself was clean, efficient, brutal. It wasn't flashy. But that was the point. Solo didn't come to entertain. He came to establish dominance. His strikes landed with impact that echoed. His pacing was relentless. There were no pauses for taunts. No wasted movements. This wasn't just a wrestling match. It was a message. Every stomp, every slam was deliberate. Measured. Almost surgical. And the way he moved after the bell? Cold. Efficient. Like a man clocking out of a job he had already mastered. The new faction never entered the ring. They didn't celebrate with him. They didn't need to. Because the work was already done. And that's what made it even more intimidating. They didn't need to gloat. Their presence said it all. They weren't coming to challenge Roman Reigns. They were already operating like they'd replaced him. Later that night, Solo left the arena without comment. No post-match promo. No backstage interview. But one fan caught footage of Solo walking through the tunnel out of the arena with his new crew flanking him, silent, focused, deadly. In that moment, it was clear. This wasn't a detour. This wasn't a subplot. This was a new chapter. And Solo Sikoa had just taken the pen. There are moments in wrestling that are louder in silence than they are in spectacle. Roman Reigns standing backstage at Night of Champions 2025, watching Solo Sikoa form a new faction without him, was one of those moments. No commentary. No entrance music. No dramatic camera cuts. Just one man, once untouchable, facing the unthinkable. Because it wasn't just a betrayal. It wasn't just defiance. It was transformation. And Roman was witnessing it live. The locker room was tense. People weren't talking much. Wrestlers, agents, trainers, even camera crew. All moved with a strange caution that wasn't normal for a post-PPV environment. Usually after a major event, the backstage area buzzes with nervous energy. Whether it's joy, adrenaline, or regret, emotions spill out of every corner. Not this night. Not after that match. Everyone knew what they had just seen. And more importantly, they were waiting to see what Roman would do. The moment Solo stood next to his new crew, that locker room dynamic shifted. Like gravity had changed. Like the air got heavier. And Roman? He didn't flinch. He was already in his ring gear, as if he had been prepared to compete. No title over his shoulder. No Paul Heyman fussing over him. Just Roman, leaning slightly forward, arms hanging at his sides, eyes fixed on the monitor. He didn't ask for a replay. He didn't ask for context. He understood. Paul Heyman, for once, didn't speak. No, my tribal chief mantra. No suggestions. No frantic whispering. Just standing behind Roman, hands folded, eyes wide. You could see it on his face, Heyman was scared. Not of Solo. Not of what happened. But of what might happen next. Because a silent Roman Reigns is not a neutral Roman Reigns. He is a volcano holding in centuries of pressure. WWE staff later said Roman watched the footage of Solo and his new allies standing at the top of the ramp 3 times. No one told him to. He just rewound it on the monitor using the production controller and played it back, never saying a word. Each time, the expression on his face grew more unreadable. You'd expect anger. Shock. Even betrayal. But all you saw was something colder, acceptance. Not the weak kind. Not surrender. The kind of acceptance that comes before retribution. There's a pattern with Roman that only the people closest to him recognize. It starts with stillness. Then the smallest of gestures. A tilt of the head, a narrowing of the eyes. Not rage, but recalibration. He isn't like most wrestlers who react on instinct. He absorbs. Processes. Redraws the map. Because Roman doesn't fight battles he didn't plan to win. And this? This wasn't defeat. This was awakening. A veteran production assistant who asked not to be named described the atmosphere as pressure without noise. You ever walk into a room and feel like the wrong word will start a fire? That's what it felt like. No one wanted to even walk past him. We didn't know if he was going to flip a table or just leave and never come back. Another source, a mid-card talent with knowledge of the evening's taping schedule, said Roman was booked to speak in a post-match segment. That got scrapped the moment Solo stood with those guys. Someone from creative whispered something to Heyman, and Heyman just shook his head. No one went near Roman after that. It wasn't fear of violence. It was the fear of what comes next. Because Roman Reigns has never been just a superstar. He's a symbol. A power structure. When he's at the top, everything beneath him aligns. Merchandise. Ratings. Stories. Locker room culture. And now, for the first time in years, that foundation cracked. That's what had people quiet. Not the betrayal itself, but the vacuum of leadership it created. And how Roman would fill it. After the third replay, Roman didn't speak. He didn't make a call. Didn't storm out. Didn't ask to confront Solo. He just stood there, leaning in slightly, eyes locked on the freeze frame of Solo and his new allies. Then it happened. He smiled. Not a full smile. Not teeth and bravado. A thin, almost imperceptible curve of the mouth. But it said more than a promo ever could. Because Roman Reigns smiles in only two situations, when he's won, or when you've made a fatal mistake thinking he lost. Ask Jey Uso in 2020 when he thought the war was over. Ask Sami Zayn when he held that chair in his hand. Roman lets you believe you've made a choice. Then he takes every choice away from you. So when he smiled, Heyman didn't exhale. He froze. Even Paul, a man who's manipulated more champions than anyone in history, didn't move. Because he knew what that smile meant. The game had changed, but Roman still held the final move. Roman didn't seek out Solo. He didn't walk to Gorilla. He didn't ask where the new faction was headed. Instead, he turned away from the monitor, walked past everyone, and disappeared into a hallway leading to the far wing of the arena. No one followed. Not even Heyman. He disappeared for nearly an hour. When he returned, he was back in street clothes. No expression on his face. Phone in his hand. Calm. He left the arena without a word. No statement. No promo. But those who saw him leave say something was different. He wasn't walking like a man who'd been upstaged. He was walking like a man who'd just seen the beginning of the next war, and was already sharpening his sword. Word spread quickly. Solo had split. Roman had stayed silent. A new faction had formed, and the tribal chief hadn't even flinched. Some superstars took it as a signal that Roman's grip was slipping. That the empire he'd built was starting to fracture for good. Others weren't so sure. One main event talent who requested anonymity said, Roman doesn't play catch-up. He lays traps. That smile? That's a trap. Anyone thinking he's out of this, they haven't been paying attention. Several younger talent members, including NXT call-ups, saw Solo's move as inspiring. A bold claim to space in an industry often dominated by established names. But even they were hesitant to speak too loud. Because Roman may not be holding the titles right now. But his presence still commands silence. This isn't the first time Roman has been betrayed. He survived faction implosions. Shield betrayals. Bloodline meltdowns. But this one feels different. Because this wasn't a rebellion. It wasn't built on emotion or conflict. It was surgical. Solo didn't scream. Didn't turn on Roman mid-match. He didn't insult him, taunt him, or attack him backstage. He just left. That's what cuts deepest. Not the betrayal, but the absence of respect for the position Roman still holds. Solo didn't challenge the tribal chief. He acted as if the title didn't matter anymore. That's the real threat. Not that Solo broke away. But that he acted like Roman's era was already over. And Roman knows it. That's why the smile wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. To understand why Solo Sikoa's betrayal hit so deep, and why Roman Reigns' reaction was more eerie than angry, you have to rewind. Back before Night of Champions. Back before WrestleMania. Back before Solo ever stepped foot in a main event. This story didn't start with a punch. It started with blood. Because the bloodline wasn't just a faction. It was a statement. A declaration that wrestling wasn't about individual stars, it was about a dynasty. And Roman Reigns? He wasn't just the face of that dynasty. He was the architect. But to build a kingdom, you need loyal hands. And for 3 years, Solo Sikoa was Roman's hammer. The quiet brother. The problem solver. The enforcer who never needed a microphone. Just a purpose. And Roman gave him that. Solo Sikoa didn't debut with flash. He didn't have viral hype packages. He didn't spend a year doing high-flying matches in NXT to catch eyes. He was introduced in chaos. Clash at the Castle, 2022. Drew McIntyre was seconds away from dethroning Roman Reigns in front of 60,000 screaming UK fans. It was written to be a classic feel-good finish. The hero topples the villain on foreign soil. Until Solo showed up. No music. No build-up. Just a hooded figure pulling the referee out of the ring, saving Roman from a pinfall, and revealing himself as the youngest brother of the Usos. The arena went silent. Then it erupted. Because the message was clear, this wasn't just another heel run. This was legacy warfare. Roman had just pulled in the final piece of his empire. And Solo? He didn't blink. He walked into the ring like a man who knew his role already. From that moment forward, Solo wasn't treated like a rookie. He was positioned as essential. Not a sidekick. Not a development story. He was Roman's insurance policy. And that alone said everything about how Reigns viewed him. He didn't just accept Solo. He trusted him. That's rare. Roman Reigns doesn't give trust easily. He tests people. He manipulates them. Breaks them. Rebuilds them into tools that fit his kingdom. He did it with Jay. With Jimmy. With Sammy. Even Heyman. But with Solo? There was no initiation. He was accepted on arrival. And for over a year, he proved why. In mafia stories, there's always one figure who rarely speaks. They're the one who walks a step behind the boss. Always present, never questioned. Their silence becomes their strength. Their unpredictability becomes their weapon. That was Solo. He didn't interrupt promos. He didn't need backstory packages. He just acted. When Sami Zayn hesitated, Solo ended the question. When Jay's loyalty wavered, Solo made the consequences clear. When outsiders like Kevin Owens or Cody Rhodes tried to step into Roman's world, Solo shut the door. He was a presence, almost mythical in how little he said, and how much damage he did. The thumb strike became iconic. Not because it was flashy, but because it came without warning. If Roman raised an eyebrow, Solo raised his arm. That kind of synergy doesn't happen by accident. It's forged. And it was that bond that made the betrayal at Night of Champions so cutting. Because this wasn't someone Roman fought to control. This was someone he never thought he had to control. More than business, Roman's emotional investment behind the camera. Those who've worked closely with both men say Roman viewed Solo differently from the rest of the bloodline. The Usos were family, yes, but they were volatile. Emotional. Torn between loyalty and independence. Solo was different. He reminded Roman of himself. Not the polished superstar Roman became, but the Roman who debuted as the Shield's powerhouse. The one who didn't talk much. Who got the job done. Who was willing to walk alone if the mission demanded it. That connection wasn't based on words. It was based on mirrors. Roman once told an interviewer off camera, "Solo's like looking at myself 10 years ago, just with more edge." More focus. He didn't mean that as a compliment. He meant it as a prediction. Roman didn't fear that Solo would rebel. He feared that Solo wouldn't need him at all. And that's exactly what happened. Loyalty or leverage? For over a year, Solo never crossed Roman. But looking back, there were signs. Moments when Solo hesitated slightly before delivering a blow. When he stood a little straighter during Roman's promos, like he wasn't bowing to the same level as the others. There was a time when Paul Heyman approached Solo mid-interview and put his hand on his shoulder. Solo flinched, just slightly, and Heyman quickly stepped back. Insiders noticed. "He's not afraid of Roman," one WWE producer said. "He respects him." But Solo was never afraid of anybody. That's what makes him dangerous. Because fear is what kept others in check. The Usos feared being cast out. Sami feared losing the family he never had. Even Heyman feared irrelevance. Solo feared nothing. So when the day came that he walked out on his own path, no one could stop him. Because Roman never built him to be dependent. He built him to be dominant. And that may be the greatest miscalculation of Roman Reigns' entire career. Solo didn't grow up watching WWE as a fan. He grew up in it. His father Rikishi is a Hall of Famer. His brothers are the Usos. His cousin is Roman. Another cousin? The Rock. This wasn't a dream. It was a blueprint. For Roman, becoming tribal chief was about taking the family name and elevating it. Making sure no one forgot the Anoa'i name. Building a legacy worthy of gods. But for Solo? It wasn't about making the family proud. It was about breaking out from their shadow. He didn't want to be the Usos' little brother. He didn't want to be Roman's weapon. He wanted to be the architect of his own empire. And Night of Champions was the moment he carved his name in the stone beside the others, not beneath it. Most betrayals in wrestling are allowed. Chairs to the back. Shock promos. Violent outbursts. Solo said nothing. And that's what made it worse. Because Roman gave him trust. He gave him respect. And in return, Solo didn't yell "I'm out." He didn't challenge Roman to a match. He didn't try to dethrone him publicly. He just moved forward without him. And that, more than anything, told Roman everything he needed to know. This wasn't just family business anymore. It was war. For weeks, the WWE Universe focused on who might challenge Roman Reigns next. Cody? Seth? Maybe even The Rock? Nobody saw Solo Sikoa coming, not as a challenger, and definitely not as the architect of a new power structure. Yet there he was at Night of Champions, standing at the top of the ramp beside three men who weren't just new faces in his story. They were a declaration. The tribal chief no longer held the monopoly on legacy, unity, or dominance. Solo wasn't alone. And that changed everything. The formation of Solo's new faction didn't happen in a promo segment. There was no reveal video or dramatic twist. It unfolded in seconds. No words. No grandstanding. Just four men aligned through presence, posture, and purpose. But those few seconds hit like a bomb. Because they didn't need to speak. They were already united. Who are they? In the immediate aftermath, speculation erupted across social media. Wrestling forums lit up with questions. Who are these guys? What's their connection to Solo? Are they family? Friends? Recruits? WWE didn't release official names that night. No lower thirds graphics. No Twitter announcements. But the fans watching closely noticed the body language. These weren't Solo's followers. They were equals. And that was the most telling sign. Roman Reigns' bloodline was built on hierarchy. Roman at the top. Everyone else below, orbiting his gravity. This faction? It was built differently. When Solo stood at the top of the ramp, he didn't position himself in the middle. He didn't stand in front. He stood beside. That visual told you everything. This wasn't a monarchy. This was a council. A collective. To understand this group's formation, you have to step away from the usual wrestling logic. This wasn't just about forming a tag team or claiming a title opportunity. It wasn't about merchandise or entrance themes. It was about independence. For 2 years, Solo had been Roman's weapon. The silent muscle in the Bloodline's war machine. But weapons don't choose who they're pointed at. And Solo was never comfortable being someone else's tool. So when he formed his own crew, it wasn't for backup. It was to build something he could control. Roman created a kingdom where everyone had to serve the throne. Solo built a war room. A place where strategies are made, not dictated. That's what separates this faction from every other group in WWE right now. It wasn't formed in reaction to an attack. It wasn't born out of revenge. It was born out of vision. Solo didn't wait to be pushed away. He walked away and brought others with him. Why now? Why Night of Champions? Because Roman wasn't booked. He was there, yes. But he wasn't defending a title. He wasn't the centerpiece of the event. He was background noise. And Solo chose that exact moment to step forward. That wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move. Symbolic. Strategic. It was the perfect time to make the world realize the Bloodline wasn't the only legacy that mattered. Because if Solo had made his move on an episode of SmackDown, it would have been buried under storylines. If he had waited for WrestleMania, it would have been interpreted as a WrestleMania moment, a one-off shock. But Night of Champions? It's the stage where titles shift. Where power resets. Where history happens. And Solo made sure history was watching. Let's dissect the moment again. Solo wins. Crowd in shock. He turns to the ramp. 3 figures emerge, no music, no theatrics. Just presence. Solo steps toward them. He doesn't raise a fist. He doesn't throw up a faction sign. He simply joins them. And then all 4 of them stand still. That stillness spoke volumes. They weren't reacting. They were revealing. The crowd didn't know what to do. Some cheered. Some booed. Most were silent, unsure whether they had just witnessed a betrayal or a coronation. That's how you know the storytelling worked. It wasn't spelled out. It was felt. While we're still learning about the members themselves, Solo's choices tell us about the faction's purpose. These men weren't flashy. They weren't loud. They didn't play to the crowd. They stood with a sense of direction, not desperation. Each of them looked like they belonged, not as Solo sidekicks, but as his co-conspirators. This wasn't a group built to challenge Roman directly. It was built to outlast him. Because Roman's bloodline has always been reactive. Whenever someone challenges the family, the bloodline closes ranks, defends the throne. Solo's faction isn't built to defend. It's built to expand. To take. To dismantle everything Roman built, not in one explosive moment, but brick by brick. The real threat isn't that Solo left the bloodline. It's that he learned everything Roman taught him, and now he's using it to build a better machine. WWE's long game, was this the plan all along? Some fans believe this has been in motion for over a year. Look back at the subtle clues. Solo rarely celebrated with Roman. He never used the "acknowledge me" slogan. His body language in promos, always standing slightly apart. His constant, surgical targeting of outsiders, while never truly bonding with his own family. It's almost as if WWE was planting seeds for this all along. And if that's true? This isn't just a twist. This is one of the most carefully executed slow burns in recent memory. Solo didn't just break away. He evolved. And the WWE universe is finally realizing, this wasn't Roman's story. It was Solo's. All along. From Shawn Michaels super-kicking Marty Jannetty through the glass to Seth Rollins driving a chair into Roman Reigns' back and shattering the Shield, these moments are seared into fans' memories not just because of the violence, but because of what they mean. Betrayal is emotional currency. It's when trust becomes a weapon. And that's exactly why Solo Sikoa's defection hits differently. Because this wasn't a heel turn in the traditional sense. It was colder, more calculated, and far more personal. Most betrayals in wrestling come with heat. They're loud, aggressive, emotional. A friend turns on a friend. A tag partner stabs the other in the back. A faction implodes over ego. That's the formula. But Solo didn't follow the formula. There was no speech. No signature move used as a final insult. No moment where the crowd gasped as a trusted ally struck the hero from behind. Solo didn't even look angry. He looked free. That's the part that broke something deeper, not just in the storyline, but in the psychology of everyone watching. Because a betrayal rooted in pain can be forgiven. A betrayal rooted in apathy? That's haunting. Solo didn't lash out. He simply stopped playing by Roman's rules. And that's what made Roman's reaction so disturbing. Because deep down, Roman knew this wasn't a power play. This was identity theft. There's a reason Roman didn't retaliate immediately. He wasn't confused. He wasn't furious. He was processing a truth he always feared but never admitted: Solo didn't need him. And more importantly, he never did. It's one thing to be betrayed by someone who wanted your position. It's another to be outgrown by someone you built. Roman prided himself on controlling his environment. His faction. His image. The bloodline was crafted to be an unbreakable structure, with Roman as its core. But Solo walked away, not with malice, but with clarity. He didn't want the throne. He wanted to burn the throne room and build a new one. And that breaks deeper than any chair shot. Because Roman didn't lose a soldier. He lost the last piece of control he thought he had. Let's not forget, Roman has been betrayed before. Jey Uso rebelled. Jimmy walked away. Sami Zayn snapped. But all of those were emotional reactions. Family meltdowns. Loyalty tested and cracked. There was shouting. Crying. Apologies. Conflict. And in each case, Roman still held the upper hand. Emotionally and psychologically. He manipulated Jey into submission. He made Jimmy's loyalty look weak. He turned Sami's rebellion into a cautionary tale. But with Solo? There was nothing to manipulate. No emotional outburst to exploit. No wavering loyalty to twist. Solo didn't break down. He didn't plead or explain. He made his move and left. That kind of betrayal is the hardest to recover from, not just in WWE, but in real life. Because it doesn't give the wounded any closure. It just is. Like a brother disappearing from your life one day and never calling back. No fight. No conversation. Just silence. Roman Reigns isn't just a character. He's a psychological system. Every promo he's cut for the past 3 years has revolved around one concept: loyalty. Acknowledge me isn't a catchphrase. It's a psychological hook. It's how he controls narratives. How he commands submission without violence. How he reshapes the emotional chemistry of everyone around him. And it worked. Until Solo. Because Solo never gave that loyalty verbally. He acted in alignment, but he never submitted in spirit. That's why Roman's entire framework collapsed the moment Solo left. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a shattering of Roman's belief system. A direct hit to the psyche. And in the psychology of power, losing belief is worse than losing control. Go back and watch the crowd reaction at Night of Champions. There was no instant chorus of boos or cheers when Solo stood with his new faction. There was confusion. Tension. A ripple of realization. And that's because deep down, fans knew what they were watching. Not just a wrestling angle, but a real emotion they'd experienced before. The best betrayals in wrestling echo real life. This one did. Anyone who's had a sibling walk away without a word. Anyone who's seen a close friend outgrow the relationship and leave you behind. Anyone who's put their trust into someone, only to find out they were building something without you all along. That's what this felt like. It hit the gut. And that's the power of deep, character-driven storytelling. It doesn't just entertain. It mirrors us. And this mirror? It hurt. Most people expect betrayal to come with confrontation. A fight. A scream. A line in the sand. Solo gave none of that. He offered no reason. No face-off. No warning. And that makes him more dangerous than any other former bloodline member. Because if you don't fear confrontation, you move differently. You build in silence. You strike with purpose. And when you do break away, you're not asking permission. You're taking territory. That's what Solo did. He didn't ask for Roman's blessing. He didn't announce his intention. He simply acted. That kind of psychology? That's what makes revolutionaries. They don't fight from the outside. They rise from within. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a tantrum. It wasn't even a confrontation. Roman Reigns watched Solo Sikoa form a new faction at Night of Champions, saw his former enforcer turn into a rival warlord, and what did he do? He smiled. Not a smug grin. Not a smirk for the cameras. It was quiet. Intentional. Almost surgical. And if you know Roman Reigns, even a little, you know that smile wasn't relief. It was a warning. Because when Roman smiles after being stabbed in the back, it doesn't mean he's okay. It means he's already visualizing how to rip the knife out and use it himself. Roman isn't like other superstars. He doesn't work off impulse. He doesn't cut reactionary promos in the ring. He doesn't challenge opponents the moment they cross him. That's what makes him terrifying. His power doesn't come from brute force. It comes from strategy. So when he smiled while watching Solo align with 3 new allies, it wasn't a display of forgiveness. It was the pause between stimulus and destruction. Because Roman doesn't respond in anger. He responds with control. That's what separates him from 99% of the locker room, and it's why he's held the company in a stranglehold for 3 years. That smile? That was the beginning of his next blueprint. In the language of dominance, silence is power. And so is restraint. Solo's move may have shocked the WWE universe, but Roman's reaction shifted the tone of the entire locker room. He didn't flip a table. He didn't demand answers. He smiled. And in that moment, you could feel it backstage, the mood turned. Because Roman isn't the kind of man you want to see calm when the world around him is falling apart. If he's yelling, he's reacting. If he's still, he's preparing. And if he's smiling? He's already decided what happens next. Everything Roman has built in the Bloodline era was about control. Controlling his narrative. Controlling his family. Controlling his perception. So when that control was shattered, when Solo stepped away without permission, you would expect Roman to spiral. But he didn't. And that's the genius of it. Because Roman didn't lose composure. He chose silence. He chose stillness. He chose the smile. That's how he keeps the upper hand, even when the story seems to be slipping away. You can take the title. You can take the spotlight. You can even take the loyalty of his blood. But you can't take the mind of Roman Reigns. And the smile was proof that his mind was still working, ruthlessly. There's a reason Roman didn't chase Solo down the hallway. There's a reason he didn't make a demand on SmackDown or call for a summit. Because Roman doesn't chase people. He watches them. Lets them feel free. Lets them make moves. And just when they think they've built something real, he crushes it. That's how he operated with the Usos. That's how he played Sami Zayn. And that's what he's doing now. That smile wasn't Roman giving up. It was Roman giving space, just enough rope for Solo to build, and eventually, to hang what he's built from. Because Roman understands something fundamental: true control doesn't come from brute force. It comes from letting people think they've escaped you, only to remind them, violently, that they never did. If you think this is the first time Roman smiled at betrayal, think again. He smiled when Seth Rollins stabbed him in the back in 2014. He smiled when the WWE Universe turned on him during his rise. He smiled when Jey Uso defied him, right before breaking him psychologically and physically until he said, "I quit." The smile always comes before the shift. The moment he reclaims control. The moment he flips the board over and starts playing a new game, one that only he understands. So when Roman smiled backstage? It wasn't the end of his story. It was the start of his next move. The blood is still warm. The wound is fresh. And he's already planning the counterstrike. For more than 1,000 days, Roman Reigns reigned as the most powerful figure in WWE. He wasn't just a champion. He was the champion. The top draw. The center of gravity for the entire company. Everything, from the Universal title picture to weekly storylines to backstage politics, revolved around one name: the Tribal Chief. But the moment Solo Sikoa stood at the top of the ramp without him, with 3 allies by his side and not a single acknowledgement offered, everything Roman had built was thrown into crisis. Because this wasn't just a betrayal of trust. This was a challenge to his entire identity. To understand the weight of what's crumbling, you need to understand what Roman Reigns really accomplished. Before Roman's bloodline era, WWE was transitioning through uncertainty. The era of Cena had passed. Ratings were volatile. The locker room was filled with great wrestlers, but few that truly moved the needle as megastars. Enter Roman. Not the squeaky clean babyface WWE tried to force-feed audiences from 2015 to 2019. But the cold, calculating, Godfather-like version that returned in 2020. The Tribal Chief. He didn't ask for acceptance. He demanded acknowledgement. He didn't chase titles. He redefined them. He turned the Universal Championship into a sacred object. The WWE Championship into a trophy of domination. And most importantly, he made the word bloodline mean more than family. It meant empire. Unlike the Shield or Evolution, the bloodline wasn't built as a gang of equals or a group of hungry talents trying to rise together. It was a monarchy. Roman at the top. Everyone else below, grateful to be in orbit. Jey was the first to bow. Then Jimmy. Then Solo. Even Paul Heyman, once the mind behind Brock Lesnar, became Roman's wiseman. For over 2 years, that fortress held strong. Any threats were absorbed, manipulated, or destroyed. Cody Rhodes? Denied at WrestleMania. Sami Zayn? Turned into a tragedy. Drew McIntyre? Outmaneuvered. And with every victory, Roman's legend grew. His image solidified. His kingdom expanded. He didn't just defeat challengers. He rewrote the concept of dominance. Power attracts opposition. Not just from enemies, but from those closest to the throne. And Roman knew that. He played his cousins against each other. He fed just enough control to Heyman to keep him useful. He gave Solo purpose without giving him a voice. It was all tactical. Because Roman's rule depended on one principle: division equals control. As long as his bloodline was fractured by emotional dependence on him, he stayed on top. The moment someone decided to stop needing him, that control collapsed. And that someone was Solo Sikoa. Roman brought Solo into the bloodline to reinforce his power. But in doing so, he introduced a figure with just as much legitimacy, if not more. Solo had the same bloodline, the same DNA, the same connection to the Inoue wrestling dynasty. But he also had something Roman didn't when he started: experience watching the game from the outside. Solo grew up watching his brothers fight for TV time, watching Roman struggle to connect with fans. He studied. He absorbed. And when he finally got the call to the main roster, he didn't act like a rookie. He acted like a weapon. But weapons, if left unchecked, develop minds of their own. Roman may have thought he was molding Solo into the ultimate enforcer. But he was actually training his replacement. For Roman Reigns, this moment isn't about losing a faction. It's about watching the narrative of his legacy spiral out of his control. Because if Solo succeeds, if this new faction thrives, it rewrites everything Roman stood for. Suddenly, the era of dominance isn't about his title reign. It becomes a stepping stone for someone else's revolution. And Roman knows it. That's why his silence after Night of Champions wasn't passive. It was preservation. Of image. Of control. Of legacy. Roman understands that perception is power. If the world starts to see him as the former tribal chief instead of the reigning one, the empire crumbles before he throws a single punch. This isn't the first time Roman Reigns has watched his bloodline fracture. It's just the first time he didn't try to stop it. For the past 3 years, the bloodline storyline has been WWE's defining saga, not just because of the dominance, but because of the cracks. The tension. The breaking points that somehow didn't fully break. Until now. Because Solo Sikoa walking away isn't the first betrayal Roman has faced. It's the latest. The most dangerous. But it only makes sense when you understand the betrayals that came before. Because this isn't a story that started with unity. It's always been a war for control. Back in 2020, when Roman returned with Paul Heyman and a brand new attitude, the first person he targeted wasn't Brock Lesnar or Drew McIntyre. It was family. Jey Uso. Roman didn't want a match. He wanted obedience. Their feud wasn't about titles. It was about acknowledgement. About establishing a pecking order. About forcing Jey to bend, not just physically, but psychologically. Hell in a Cell 2020 was the turning point. Roman didn't just beat Jey. He broke him. Made him say "I quit" while choking out Jimmy in front of him. It wasn't strategy. It was trauma. Roman weaponized love. That was the moment Roman became more than a heel. He became dangerous. Because he showed the world he would use family to control family. And he won. Jey didn't walk away. He bowed. And the bloodline was born. But even then, you could see it. Jey never stopped hurting. That wound stayed open. And one day, it bled out. Jimmy's journey was more delayed, but just as devastating. He returned from injury and tried to be the bridge between Roman and Jey. The peacemaker. But Roman doesn't allow bridges. He burns them to stay in control. Over time, Jimmy saw through the manipulation. He watched his brother, once defiant and proud, become a shell of himself. He tried to break Jey out. Roman punished both. There was no escape, until Jimmy made a choice. At Money in the Bank 2023, he delivered a super kick heard around the world. To Roman. It was shocking. Poetic. And ultimately, short-lived. Because Roman, as always, recovered. Reclaimed. Reasserted dominance. Jimmy's act of rebellion was loud. But it lacked the follow-through. That's why it failed. That's why he came back. That's why he faded. And that's what makes Solo's betrayal even more devastating. Because Solo didn't try to break free. He just left. And he didn't look back. Sami was never part of the family by blood. But he became something more dangerous, family by faith. He wasn't forced into the bloodline. He begged to join. He wore the shirt. Took the beatings. Played the clown. He made Roman laugh. But it was all temporary. Roman never saw Sami as real. And when Sami finally saw that truth, after months of humiliation, testing, and doubt, he did what everyone else was too scared to do. He chose Kevin Owens over the Empire. And he paid for it. The moment he hit Roman with that chair at the Royal Rumble, the entire arena felt it. Not because of violence. Because of emotion. Roman looked heartbroken. Betrayed. But not surprised. Because he always knew Sami didn't belong. That made the pain easier to weaponize. Roman turned Sami's moment into another manipulation of the Usos. And Sami? He became a martyr. Powerful in narrative, but never in control. That's what separates Solo from all of them. Jay was broken into obedience. Jimmy lashed out in frustration, then faded away. Sami never truly belonged. But Solo? He was trusted. He was groomed. He was never broken. Never tested. Never mocked. And that's why his exit is more damaging than every betrayal before him combined. Because it wasn't fueled by rage. It was fueled by readiness.